What's up, guys? Kel Balassi here with Carbon Copy. We have Colin Scott on our video today, and I'd like to introduce you to Colin. Colin, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do, and who do you serve?
Yes, sir. Once again, thank you, Kel. I appreciate you for having me. Like you said, my name is Collin Scott. I am an investor. I am a property manager, and I'm also a licensed sales agent. So do a little bit of everything in real estate. I got my start property managing, and that's basically my bread and butter. I know a lot about property managing, different markets and different areas. And so that's what I've come to talk to you guys today about.
Awesome, awesome. So, Colin, how many units do you manage currently?
I currently manage 140 units.
Wow. Managing that with that many, obviously, um, it's a lot of work, and it requires a different type of person that could do that. I manage a few, so I know the type of work needed to be able to do that. That many. Just can only imagine what it is for 140 units. So, guys, today Colin is going to be giving us a lot of value when it comes to property management. So, I'm gonna leave the stage to Colin and to teach us property management 101.
I'm gonna share my screen with you guys and show you a little presentation I put together. Uh, Let me know if you can see it on your side, Kel.
Yep, I can see it.
Right. Can you see the screen?
Yes. See your screen. Property management 101.
Okay. And if anybody would like to get my information, I'll have more of that at the end. But of course, this is going to be property management 101. So I'll just take you guys quickly through it. First, I wanted to start off with, give you guys a quick insight of my background. Like I did say, I started in property management. As a matter of fact, I began as a leasing agent at the age of 18. Shortly after that, when I realized I had a real passion and love for real estate, I decided I wanted to take it a step further, and I became a property manager at the age of 22. And shortly thereafter, I became a property owner at the age of 24. Um, Right now, I manage as many as 140 units simultaneously. So that's you got some scattered site. When I say that, I mean you have some in different locations. Then you have some large complexes up to 30, 40 units. So I've done pretty much every kind of property that you can do. I've done small single family and I've done large apartment complexes. I've been an active investor and property manager for the last 6 years. So I'm always out looking for deals, always trying to transact and see what opportunity is going to present itself next. Like I did mention earlier, I'm also a licensed sales agent, an expert deal finder. So, just to give you a quick encapsulation, I have wholesale before. I've experimented with flips and been a part of many different remodeling projects. So you can call me kind of a one-stop shop for when it comes to all things real estate. I can help you find a deal. I can help you structure it. I can help you purchase the property as your licensed agent. I can help you manage it, and then I can also be there on the other side as the agent when you're ready to sell your property. So I can be with you from beginning to end, pretty much a one-stop shop for all things real estate. But enough about myself. Let's get into it. I do want to start off with the the end in mind and kind of want to lay out a picture for I don't want to assume anything. So let's make sure we all understand what property management is because people get confused. Um, I like to think of it as, a property manager's goal is to maximize the property owner's passive income while minimizing their active stress. At its core, property management, most of the time, which is done by a third party, is the oversight and operation of real estate. You have a lot of people who self property managers like myself, And if you have the resources and time to do it, I think you should give it a try. But a lot of times it's done by a third party. So you could just think of a property manager as the middleman who will handle the daily headaches of owning a rental property. Um, the main responsibilities you'll get for a property manager, excuse me, are tenant relations. This is the human side of the job. So your property manager, they'll find and vet the people living in or using the space. They'll be in the head of marketing, so advertising vacancies to keep them full, screening tenants, running credit checks and verifying their references, and leasing, so handling the contracts, move-ins, and unfortunately the eviction process as well. Financial management. So they basically act as the property's CFO. They're going to ensure the investment remains profitable. So rent collection, setting the price for rent, collecting payments, chasing down late fees, budgeting, making sure you're paying the property's bills, the taxes, the insurance, utilities, if that's something you're covering, and providing financial reports to the owners. We also oversee maintenance and physical care. So, a property manager is responsible for keeping the asset in good shape to preserve its value. You want to make sure you're on top of repairs as far as coordinating with your technicians, whether it be your plumbers, your electricians, all your contractors. Also, emergencies. So, as a property manager, you'll have to be the one who has to get up at 3 a.m. when they call you about, there's a pipe burst or there's a fire. Fire and water are the number one damages to property that you're going to come across. So, you have to be ready for all emergencies and just being there for upkeep of the property, landscaping, general cleanliness, and keeping the curb appeal up because ultimately that's what people are going to see when they first visit your property, and then legal compliance. So staying on the right side of the law is also going to be a huge part of the gig. You got to stay updated on the local housing laws. So ensuring you have, fair housing practices, safety codes, keeping fire alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, emergency exits up to standard. So that's the big four, I call it, when you get into property management. What all does this job entail? I also want to make sure I touch base on what property management is not, because a lot of people get it misconstrued. Um, there are boundaries, of course. You're going to wear a lot of hats as a property manager, but you're not going to be the expert on everything. Common misinterpretations that you're going to get when people think about property managing, it's not asset management, not asset
Hmm.
management. So the names, they sound similar, but the focus is different. Property managers will focus on the day-to-day operations. So give you an example like a leaking faucet or late rent. An asset manager focuses on the long-term investment strategy. So deciding, when am I going to sell the building, refinancing the mortgage, major portfolio restructuring. That's more asset management. That's not what a property manager is going to do. Uh, it's not legal representation. So property managers, they know the law. I'm sorry, they should know the law, but they're not lawyers. They can file standard eviction paperwork, but if a tenant sues you or it's a complex legal dispute and that arises, they can't represent you in court or provide formal legal advice. So you'll still need an attorney for the heavy lifting. So yeah, it's not legal representation. It's also not financial auditing or tax prep. So a property manager, they can track your income and your expenses, but they're not your CPA. They provide a 1099 for you and a summary of the year's activity, but they generally won't give you a tax saving strategy or manage your personal income tax filings. It's not a blank check either for maintenance. A property manager is an agent, they're not the owner. So they shouldn't spend large sums of money without your approval. Most of the contracts have a maintenance limit in there. So, for example, $500, we're not gonna, bother the owner unless there's an expense over $500, and then we need to get his approval. Anything above that is probably going to require the owner's okay, and you can, lower that number to 250. I've seen it as low as 100 before. So it's here or there what what your tolerance is as an owner, but it's not a blank check for maintenance. You do have to pay for that. And it's not guaranteed income. Hiring a manager doesn't magically eliminate the risks of real estate. They can't guarantee you 100% occupancy or that a tenant won't lose their job and stop paying you. They can mitigate the risk for you, but the financial risk of the investment stays with the owner.
Hmm.
So just wanted to break that down because when you hear property management, a lot of times people will get that misconstrued with other things. And I just want to make it clear that you as a property manager, you are more so the middleman between the owner and the actual property, unless you're going to be self-managing yourself, and then you want to take what I'm getting ready to talk to you about into account.
Awesome.
All right, you following along with me, fine?
Yeah, yeah,
All
definitely.
right. All right, I'll go to the next. Just to give you a little bit of my experience when it comes to property managing, and everyone's going to have their own journey that's different for them, which I'm getting ready to break down for you. But just wanted to give you a little bit of my experience. So I've invested in managing, many different properties, uh, and throughout that, I've kind of built myself a game plan so that way I stay successful and I thrive even when the market's not doing well. One thing for me that helped me come to that decision is because I know I want to stand out. So I like to focus on a niche audience. When you focus on niche audiences, you're gonna circumvent a lot of your competition as a beginner because everyone is vying for the same type of tenant in the open market. You're looking for whoever can qualify for my rent, pay on time, pay my deposit, and not, dirty up my place. Everyone's looking for that kind of open market tenant. Whereas I kind of go look for the tenants that people are not don't know about or not necessarily geared to serve. So
Hmm.
a lot of the programs that I look at are going to be, your government housing authorities, or otherwise Section 8, VASH, your veterans assistance,
Hmm.
local grants and housing, the crisis center, elderly and senior living. So that's kind of what I like to focus on because I
Yeah.
feel like it gives me an advantage. Um, I segmented myself and I'll say that it worked for me in a big way in 2020. So during the pandemic, when a lot of other property owners and managers they could not collect rent from their tenants who were either laid off or facing a financial hardship, they still had to come up with the money to cover their note to the bank for the property that they have a loan on. You still have to pay the bank every single month for the loan that you take out for your property if you didn't buy it cash and you financed the deal. You still have to pay that note. Well, in the pandemic, everyone's facing a financial hardship. If they can't pay their rent, you're going to have issues paying your note. I'm blessed enough that that was never my experience. My rents were paid on time on the first of the month, direct deposit into my account by the government. But that's because how I structured my niche to where I want to focus and serve on audiences where I know I'm gonna have that at my disposal. So just starting with the end in mind, I knew my goal was to own a property that's going to cash flow well enough to me to pay for my lifestyle, but also have enough property value and potential for appreciation. For that, so that way I could work another deal or use that to jump into my next deal in the future. Um, so just a little bit of food for thought for you guys whenever
Hmm.
you do uh, decide that you want to either self-manage or you want to hire a property manager, looking at different audiences and not just serving the general public, uh, it could accelerate your growth. But like I said, there are different pros and cons to that. What can you tolerate and what works for your lifestyle? So, just be careful of what you consider because I'm sorry, property management and real estate, um, for the property manager, it is a headache. There's no way around it because you're dealing with people. So people are going to give you a headache. It's which one can you tolerate the best? Which works best for you? Okay.
Yep.
I'm getting ready to touch on that a little bit deeper when I go into my next subject. Now, I want to play a game with the people who are watching this presentation. I want you to think to yourself, was this done to me by a tenant who is, uh, let's just say, they're on Section 8 housing, so kind of a negative connotation about cleanliness and upkeep, Was this done by somebody who's one of my niche audience members, or was this done by somebody who's a part of the general public and inquiring from the open market, who's not usually a part of my niche audience? I want you to think about that. Just take a look at these pictures, and I want you to think which tenant did this to me? Somebody who is part of my niche, or somebody who's not? So a little bit of food for thought. This is specific to myself. I think that everyone should make a pros and cons list when they're debating about which audience they want to serve, and see what fits your lifestyle and you can tolerate the best, because what works for me may not work for you. What I can't stand and can't get behind may be something that you love and that you can tolerate. So you should make a pros and cons list based on your niche and who you want to serve, and ultimately what works best for your lifestyle. So my niche is uh I serve the Section 8 community. Not all my rentals are Section 8, but a large majority are. Uh Pros of serving people who are on the housing authority. Pro for me is I get, which I explained in the pandemic, all of my rent, I was receiving pretty much 90% of all my rents direct deposit into my account on the first of the month. So I never have a situation where I'm having to chase down a tenant for, part of the rent, and having to evict them, and having to, have a go back and forth with them about rent, because I get my rent direct deposit to my account from the
Hmm.
government pretty much the first of every single month. It's never really an issue as far as rental income and a dispute with a tenant. Because I do serve the housing authority, most of my tenants have pre-screened backgrounds. So to even get a voucher for the Section 8, they're going to screen your background. So a lot of criminal convictions and low credit people, and people who are gonna, raise red flags other um, at other institutions, they've already been screened by the government. And so I have a little bit of assurance in knowing that whenever I receive their voucher, that they've already had their background screened. They also all have government employed caseworkers for assistance. So if I have an issue getting in touch with them, or if I have an issue that's a dispute with them, I can speak with their caseworker who is a government employee, and I can, get to the root of the situation, or I can find amicable solution. Also, because I do serve a underprivileged community, which is, a lot of the times they have a negative connotation among the property managers, owners, and renters. They also, on their vouchers, they get a premium rent. So, say for example, on the open market in Galveston for a two-bedroom, uh, you're looking at maybe 13 to 1400 average for rent for a two-bedroom, whereas on the Section 8 Housing Authority, well, I know I'm making 1641 minimum at that number, so I make $250 more just for using their Section 8 voucher, and I'm getting the same thing. I use the same service, so the same way that I would render my service to somebody who's on the open market, I do the same to somebody who's on Section 8, but I make $250 more because I'm accepting somebody with this voucher who's facing a hardship. It doesn't make me a difference because they're paying me more to do the same work I would have already been doing. You got a question, Kel?
Yeah, I do. So as an investor, that holds properties, so when I'm looking at the market rent, if I use your services, or if I someone who specializes in the housing authority, I can get a $250 more in rent and a lower um vacancy rate, basically. So it's a win, if you're a long-term hold investor, seems like it's a no-brainer to to basically try this strategy, at least give it a shot and work with someone like you who's specialized in it.
In my opinion, it is, and it works for me, but my disposition is that I'm tolerant to that. Some people, they may not want to deal with that. Some
Hmm.
people, the money may not be worth everything you have to do to get that benefit. So
Hmm.
I completely understand both sides of the coin, but for somebody like myself, who has the end in mind, I don't mind uh I don't mind taking on that struggle for a bit premium rate. And then
We got a
also
question here from Victor.
yes,
Hey, what's going on, Collin? Thank you for putting this on, and thank you, Kel. Hey, quick question. So I have a property we just renovated here in Houston, Texas, homestead area, and we actually ended up listing it with the realtor because I was having a hard time getting quality or just getting responses back on housingauthority.com,
yes,
houstonhousingauthority.com. So,
yes.
what I've noticed. So, can you tell me like the real life, like then the real life with some of the tenants that you dealt with. Just and the reason I ask is because um we've had a few clients. We had some for Section 8. Now we have one that's public market, but she gets Social Security for one of her kids that's disabled. But I guess but even with that, she's having issues like for deposit, um, as well as first month's rent. And even when I was dealing with the few people that came for Section 8, one of their things was even deposit. So what I learned that it sounds like their cash, they may not have the cash, because we're renting ours for 2,300, and so I don't know if that's should we be going down our deposit or what have you seen, and what is your advice on stuff like that? With dealing with people that may get their applications late or just don't have any motivation even to finish and or have the money to even do deposits, stuff like that.
That's a great question. That actually leads into my con side. If you see my first line is they generally have less cash on hand for fees applied. So that's a headache that a lot of the time I'm willing to live with because I have a system in place that helps me recoup that deposit. So you say yours is at 2,300 for your rental. What I like to do when I know that I'm dealing with somebody on Section 8 who's going to be strapped for cash, I'm not going to have a lot to put down up front. I like to enter into a separate agreement with their lease, basically stating that they can pay me their deposit in installments. So they may not be able to pay you $2,300 up front, but if they pay you $200 on the first month and then 200 for each consecutive month, then by the time the lease has expired, they've paid you uh 2,300 towards your deposit while not coming off of a huge chunk of change in the beginning. So it makes it a little bit more bearable for them. So there are systems in place that you can put to help them circumvent that, and that way you can get your money for your deposit, and also they don't have to come out of 2,300 out of pocket up front. That's a strategy that I use is basically just coming into an installment agreement about the deposit. Um, does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's pretty helpful.
Yeah.
Um, I think that was it's really now I didn't ask it specifically. That was great for that first part of the question. Now the second part would be when you find applicants that aren't even, kind of being on a correct timeline of filling out their application, getting it back to you or the realtor. Does that ever, like, have you ever noticed that those people that have a hard time getting stuff back to you or the realtor, that they're usually the ones that's usually a harder problem with dealing with, and you shouldn't go for those people,
Yes,
or
sir.
should you? Okay, good. Hmm.
I'm actually going to get into that a little bit later. You're touching on all my topics, so I'm trying not to give away my entire presentation.
I
But
got you.
you're no, you're exactly correct. When you're dealing with somebody who wants to play, I don't like to use the term unprofessionally, but if somebody's playing games with you in the beginning, they're going to play games with you throughout
Hmm.
towards the end. So if they can't be upfront about the situation, and maybe they are facing a hardship and just need a foot in the door. And if you allow them to get their foot in the door, which is what I do a lot of time by letting them pay their deposit in installments, a lot of the
Yeah.
times they do mean good and they can catch up. But you just want to be take it case by case. I wouldn't do that to every single person. You want to at least make sure you have some kind of assurance that they can make up and get on track with the payment plan. But also, if they're being avoidant to you and non-committal, through at the beginning of the process, you're just going to cause yourself a bigger headache in the end.
Yeah. All right, I appreciate that, especially with the installment. That was pretty helpful. And the only reason I'm asking, because I'm going through this, but having a conversation right now, and it's just like, okay, doesn't even make sense to, So I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. You wouldn't believe how many if you offer that to a prospective tenant, how many of them would look at that and take that and say nobody else is going to offer me this, so I have to go with this property because of that's a lot of people's reality. They can only think as far as tomorrow if they're going to be financially hardshiped. So if you can provide them with a solution that helps them make it to the next day, and then you keep them on track and you condition them to where okay, like hey, I'm going to make this easy for you and me, so it's a win-win. Just make it, additional $200 with your rent for each month. And now instead of paying that amount up front, now you're coming out of it each month, and it's a little bit more bearable for her or him, whoever your tenant is. And for as for yourself, you make your money in the end either way. It's a security deposit. So if everything goes as planned, she should be receiving it back. But you know that your losses are going to be covered by because you're receiving that monthly. So I think that was a great question. I appreciate you for asking. Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Yes, sir. Okay. I'm gonna get back to my last pro because I did want to touch on this. But another reason why I used housing contracts from the government is because I have more recourse control over the situation in my property, which basically means I'm gonna have better care taken of my property, which is a huge plus for me. Now, to tie that into one of the cons, I'm going to skip over one for a second, but one of the cons is, you're going to have a negative connotation with uncleanliness and property damage. The first thing people think of when you say Section 8 or lower income or, this isn't public housing, but something of the sort, you're going to think of, beat up properties with loud and obnoxious tenants, and I would only say that people are people, and you can get that anywhere. I've been at Class A properties who've had problem tenants. I've worked with Class B properties who have problem tenants, and Class C. You're gonna get problems anywhere. It's just about, what can you tolerate, what can you stomach. For me, I know that I'm gonna have good care taken of my property because essentially, if I accept your Section 8 voucher and you're gonna live in my property, and I have a relationship with your caseworker, I don't want this to sound rude or mean in any way, but I essentially, if you were to mess up my property or to start altercation with me in any way, if I wanted to see to it, I could make sure your voucher gets terminated, and essentially you would be homeless. I've never had it taken that far and I never will take it that far, but it's kind of like, you're carrying a big stick. You got a little bit of recourse and control because someone's not going to tear up your property if that means they're going to be put out on the street and not, these Section 8 vouchers, a lot of times you might take 3 to 4 years to get called up off the waiting list. So these are very valuable and people don't want to lose them. So if you know that I have control over your future of whether or not that you have a home, I think you take a lot more better care of your property, and I haven't had to deal with any issues like that, thankfully. But just to say, you're gonna have better control of your property with the niche that I do, but the negative connotation that you can get from dealing with my niche, I want to put a disclaimer in there because you can get that from dealing with almost anyone. I don't want to put Kale's business out there, but Kale will tell you. Um, he just got done dealing with a issue with the tenant, and things can get drawn into court, and things can get very ugly when you don't have a
you.
level of recourse and level of control over a situation. And if you're dealing with a tenant who's, like, say, not in my niche, you don't have any control of the situation. They could pick up and leave, not pay your rent for 3 or 4 months. You don't receive that rent, but they still have access and keys to your property. So while your property is not making any money because you're not receiving the rent, you also can't put the property back out on the market because your old tenants' stuff is still in there, and you have to go through the court system and pay, different fees and have you whatever to get them out of your property, all while still not being back on the market. I haven't had to experience that because a lot of my tenants wouldn't take it that far because I have recourse over them with their voucher system. So with the regular open market tenant who wants to inquire from my properties, they can pick up and leave whenever they want to, and I got to fight the court about it. With
Mhm.
my niche, I don't have to fight anybody. I just call your caseworker, and whatever needs to be done, it'll get done, and I'll have somebody in there by the next month. So that's kind of what why my niche works for me. This list can be totally different for somebody else, but that's what worked for me. A con that I did skip over, I don't want to take too much of your time, but a con I did skip over is the strict, potentially costly inspection process. They just want to make sure that you're not being a slumlord. So you
Mhm.
can't have, receive premium rent and get 200 times more than what market, $200 more than what market rent would be, and you're not fixing up you're not fixing holes in the wall, you're not fixing leaks, you're not taking care of the property. So they want to make sure that you are up to code, and they do come out and check every year. So that's one thing that I also do like, because if they're going to keep me on code and keep me on task, that just helps me keep take better care of my property because it's stuff I should
Mhm.
be doing anyway. So
Yeah.
I'll leave you guys with that as far as finding your niche. This is my niche, but what's different for me may be perfect for you. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next. Really quickly, I just want to get into the do's and don'ts. If you follow this section, uh, you don't need to hear anything else because this will keep you in line. So just make sure if you need to screenshot or take a picture, I will get this down because this is going to be the most important part. So this is the things that you should do if you're going to be self-managing, or this is what you should expect from your property manager if you're going to hire a third party. Uh, so you do want to treat it like a business. Emotional decisions that's going to lead to financial loss. So you want to make sure you standardize your process. I don't know if you guys are familiar with any CRMs out there, but get you a CRM. I use Appfolio, but there's other CRMs like Buildium. Um, I forgot the other ones, but just make sure you have a system in place to make sure that you're keeping track of all late fees, tenant screenings, keeping all their information in one place. That way you can get to it if you need to. So make sure you're treating it like a business. Do screen rigorously. So I know it's hard as a property owner to have a vacancy and it's just sitting out there and it's not collecting any money, but you still got to pay the note on it. But trust me, you will have a bigger headache if you move somebody in there quickly without doing your research on them. You guys always have to verify their income, run credit reports, and call their previous landlord. Um, not just the landlord who's they're living with right now, because a lot of times if you only call the landlord they're living with at the moment, they may give a glowing review about them just to get them out of their property.
Mhm.
You never want to just take one person's word for it. So have a rock solid vetting process. You'll save yourself a lot of headaches. And like I was saying earlier, if they don't have enough money to pay the application fee or deposit up front, a lot of times they won't have enough to pay you and stay timely with the rent. So just make sure you're careful with that. There are ways, like I said, I gave a solution to work around it, but it's a case by case basis. You can't do that for everyone. I would say prioritize preventative maintenance. So just be proactive with all your repairs. Fix the small leak today so you don't have to replace the subfloor tomorrow. Do regular inspections. It's good for you to go and inspect your property with permission and notice, of course, just to get an idea of, is my tenant clean? Are they keeping my property safe? Is there a potential issue in this property that I don't know about that can harm the tenant and make me liable that they're unaware of? So always want to do preventative maintenance. Um, Also, for any work orders you receive, this is my way of doing it. You don't have to do it this way, but this is what I've seen works best. I do no less than 24-hour response time. The reason being because the number one cause for tenant turnover is lack of response from the maintenance team. So I at least want to acknowledge under 24 hours that I've seen their request. Even if I don't have a solution for it, I will at least let them know that I've seen it and I will begin working on it as soon as possible. You want to keep meticulous record. Always document everything. You want to keep a paper trail of all communications, receipts, and move outs. Also, a lot of photos. If you do wind up in the eviction process, this will save you in the end. So just make sure you keep meticulous record. You want to make sure you know the law. Laws change. You want to know all the fair housing procedures. Like I said, talked about smoke alarms, carbon monoxide. You got to have those in there. The saying "I don't know" is not a good legal defense. So just make sure you stay up to date with that. Or if you have a proper manager, make sure they're up to date. Um, Always get the money. So there's a lot of times where you're gonna have a sad story or a sob story from your tenant about why they can't come up with it, at the appropriate time. And what I would just advise you to do is to uh, put a date on it or create a deadline to where they think they may have it or may come into the money or get an opportunity. Don't just say, okay, pay me when you can. Okay, just let me know when you have it, because a slippery slope will turn into an avalanche. Before you know it, they'll be 2 months behind. And when you call them to come get it, they're not going to answer. And now you're trying to evict them. So make sure you
Hmm.
correct the early behavior often. And I put this part in all green. If you have a good, reliable vendor, keep them. I don't think that needs any explanation,
Yeah.
but I'll just say there's a lot of shady vendors out there. There's a lot of untrustworthy guys out there. If you find one who has integrity, who's timely and professional, keep them. All right. This is what you should not do. Um, like I said earlier, do not ignore communication. Most of the tenant landlord disputes, they escalate because of lack of response. So even if you don't have a solution, even if you don't know what to do, even if you are intimidated by this tenant, at least say something, at least acknowledge their issue. It'll only hurt you in the end if you don't. Do not cut corners on insurance. Make sure you have a landlord specific policy, not just homeowners insurance for a property that you own that's not your homestead. And make sure your tenants have they carry renters insurance as well, because if something does happen to their property, you do not want to be liable. Do not enter without notice. So a lot of times, people think just because that you own the property that you can, come and go whenever you say and please. That's not the truth. It's actually the law. You have to provide 24-hour notice that you're going to be there, unless it's an absolute emergency, like that you see smoke coming out of the window. Uh, this is a huge one. Do not personalize the relationship with your tenant. It's really, really hard to come to one of your tenants when you guys have been, treating each other like friends and, getting very close and personal. When they come late on the lease, I'm sorry, late on the rent, and you need to enforce those terms. Well, hey man, you never talked to me about a late fee before. Well, hey man, it's kind of hard to enforce your terms when you've been buddy buddy with them. So just make sure you maintain a professional boundary. And the big one is do not self-manage if you lack time. If you have another career where that takes up a majority of your hours and your bandwidth and your brain, and you can't really focus all your attention on it, please delegate. But do not let your property suffer just because you don't want to pay an 8% a month fee. It's not worth it. All right. This is the same picture I showed you guys earlier. If you can't tell already, that the damage that was done on the left was done by somebody who is not in my niche audience group. She tore my property up. She left her dog there for 2 weeks. The dog actually ate through the bedroom door, and I couldn't even get. I found out actually that you can't even have animal control come pick up the animal without me serving her an eviction. So I had to evict her first before animal control even come pick up their dog.
Well,
Long story short, if you do your due diligence, and if I would have spoken to the previous landlord, I would have known that she was already in trouble for property damage, and that would have saved me $5,000 on this clean out and repair. Do you have a question, Kel?
no, I was just like, wow, that's you can't, even if the dog's about to die, like, 'cause it's been there for 2 weeks, you can't.
No. that was blowing my mind. I was like, man, this dog, you can see its rib cage. Like, come get this thing out of my property, and they wouldn't do it because I had not yet served it with an eviction. So the person who did this was not one of my niche audience members. They're actually somebody I had a vacancy and I wanted to fill it quickly. And I took a chance on somebody who inquired from the open
Oh
market.
man.
She got up, she ran away, she didn't ever pay me my rent. Didn't need a evictor because she just dropped off the grid. Haven't seen her since. I had to change my locks and everything. But this is just a case study that goes to show you you got to do your due diligence and don't accept the first person that comes to you who's looking for somewhere to stay because um, it can be more trouble than it's worth. My last point that I want to leave you guys with is a red flag checklist to help you avoid what you just saw in the previous picture. These are very thick, but I'll go through it quickly. Just some of the red flags you want to look for. I think Victor asked a question earlier, or Vince, I'm sorry, asked a question earlier. I want to make sure that he understands this is what you should be, this is what you should be screening your tenants based off of. And if you hear any of these, let them go. So the urgency trap, the red flag is, hey, I gotta move in tomorrow. I gotta find a place by the end of the week. I got, all cash. I'll pay you right now. The person who's very, very quick to want to get in, it should make you suspicious as to why they're leaving where they came from so soon or without a better plan. High quality tenants, they're usually going to plan 30 days in advance. They'll want to come meet you before they move up the property. So just be careful when people approach you with extreme urgency. A lot of times it can mean they've been evicted or their current landlord has refused to renew their lease for good reason. Um, the second red flag is the self-employed without proof. So I'm sure you've had one of these before, Kel, where somebody claims they make a lot of money and they have a lot of high
Mhm.
income, but they can't really prove it. It's nowhere, there's no paper trail, there's no bank statements, tax returns, or 1099s. They can't really show you where they're making this money at. Um, and they're not to say that they can't have it because in the year 2026, there's so many different side hustles and so many different avenues and ways to make money. Uh, People do pay with cash, so I get it, I understand, but you want to have a paper trail for yourself, and I don't think it behooves you to take somebody if you can't really prove where they're making their income because they may make a lot of money now when you are getting your lease signed, but in month 3, 4, and 5 when they're not paying their rent, you're going to be wondering, okay, what happened to this person's income? If it's seasonal, then that's not really something that you want to put yourself into. Okay. Um, the current landlord bias, that's number three. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but sometimes the landlord for a property, they'll give a great review of a tenant just to get them out of their hair. Like, oh, please take him, please get him up out of here. Please. I want them out of my lease. So you got to be careful. I would actually go back and speak to the previous two landlords just to get a little bit of truth from them because they don't have anything to lose. This is no longer their tenant. They'll give you the whole truth and tell you everything you need to know. Number four, I would say the resistance to digital systems. So when somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I only pay in cash. I don't use email. I don't want to use your online portal. Can I just come pay you with cash?" That should be a red flag in and of itself. That also ties into number two, because you want to be able to see a paper trail. You want to be able to prove this stuff. If they're trying to stay off the grid or avoid documentation, it's like where are they getting their money from? Are you accepting illegal funds? Um, is this going to have the police knocking at my door? Just be careful. And then oversharing or storytelling, somebody's walking with you the entire time and they're talking about, how crazy the last landlord was and why they were always in their business, and then, how they never got along with any of their neighbors and the neighbors are crazy. Well, if everyone's crazy except for them, they're usually the common denominator, and that's the person you should be on the lookout for. So I would just be wary of anybody who's showing any of these red flags when you are in the leasing process. That doesn't mean that they are the wrong tenant for you, but you want to take a look at them very closely. And If they have multiple of these, I would walk away. So that's a little bit of the rules I would follow, the do's and don'ts, and the red flag checklist. If you do that, um, it'll definitely put you in a good position to proactively be taking care of your property and begin cash flow.
Nice.
All right. And then this is my information in case anyone had any questions, wanted to follow up with me, or needed to reach out and wanted any assistance with that.
Got it. Dude, Colin, like, uh, Victor, I- I've been a landlord for 6 years, and the stuff you gave is like someone who's like doing this full time. Like, I even some of this, like, I won't even be able to catch some of these things, the info that you were giving me. So, I still don't know enough because if you're a landlord, you may have a few properties versus someone who does this full time daily, getting new tenants, screening new tenants. It's a different like mind you have. You know how to spot like what could go wrong to
Yes,
your
sir.
operations. For me, I'm like been a landlord, but I don't know. I don't know
Yes, sir.
until I experience it, until like something goes bad.
So, hey, Kel, I just want to ask you a question. How's your experience been as a landlord for 6 years? Are you doing any section? I think you did say you're doing Section 8 too, right?
I did. So my experience in Section 8 is actually pretty good. I had a lady, and it was in Austin, and she moved from a different state. Some of these people, like either they move from different bad situations and they may be okay financially, or they may be, you can't really tell what situation they're in because, sometimes, the property manager, like, or they're not allowed to tell you, right? So, like, they have a caseworker, they'll just say, hey, this is just a situation. We don't want to get too deep into it. But every time I went to her property, the place was immaculate. It was better than when I rented it to her. So I was like, wow, why can't I have this? I didn't get the 200 plus per month more, but because it was Austin. Here in Houston, actually you get better Section 8 rents than compared to in Austin at that time, at least. But she took care of the property, paid on time, no issues whatsoever. So I didn't have a bad experience. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Now, would you say most of your rentals are public market?
Yes, most of my rentals are private market. I've had two eviction. Well, one, I inherited a tenant. I evicted that one, but I didn't do it myself. The last one I evicted, I actually did everything myself, and I had a little bit of help from Colin. He coached me on it, how to do it myself. So if you need to work with Colin if you need help on doing this eviction. But I
Yeah, just
basically,
screenshot
yeah, dude, I was like,
it.
I was like, man, I was at loss. I was like, dude, like I have to evict this lady, and it's gonna take. Because I thought it was fast. Now it's faster with the 2026 stuff. I
Yeah.
believe they're able to evict faster, but before it took me about a month, month and a half, and then they had to like, oh, we had to extend it because there wasn't enough. There wasn't enough notice. I'm like, what do you mean there's not enough notice? I filed the eviction November 15. They should
Mhm.
have gotten a notice, and now the eviction is December 16th. So it's like 1 month. Like, no, the sheriff or whatever, the constables weren't able to give the notice fast enough. So we're gonna extend it to the end of 29th. And then when
Oh,
I
wow.
it was but then also when I was there and I was presenting to the judge, that's another thing. It's like another specialty because when you're out there and fighting an eviction, it's like you're your own lawyer. You don't know what you're talking about. Like if you mess up on one single thing, the judge will throw away your case.
Mm,
So like you messed up on the date, all right, come back in a week or two, right?
Yeah.
It's the holidays.
mhm,
Come back. That's 2 weeks of no rents, right?
mm.
I'm like, what do you mean? Like I thought everything's good. Like, no, you messed up on this one thing, or you don't have any proof that you're an LLC. So when you're an LLC, you have to make sure that you have all the docs with you to show that you're able to represent yourself. And then you have to make
Yeah,
sure all the dates and every county is different. They have their own requirements how to represent yourself and they don't give you legal advice. So you're there fighting for your like like you gotta know, So
yeah. That's good advice just there.
yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me. I may be on mute.
No, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, all right. And Colin, let me ask you both because I know Kel is always looking to buy. Are you also buying, and what does that look like? Because I'm pretty sure you have a few properties now. The way I make Kel was at one of his own events, but also I do wholesaling
Okay.
whenever I do have some properties. So just wondering, what are you even what is your your kind of buy box within focusing in your own niche?
Okay. As far as my buy box, I'm at the point now where I'm really not looking at much that's not multifamily. For single family, I kind
Yeah.
of put that into my box of if I want to do a flip or if the property's really distressed, I'll think about it as a rental. But for the most part, I want multiple doors if I'm going to be investing anymore, only because I've had the experience of property managing. And like I said, a headache is a headache to me. Either way you go, it's just about how much do I
Yeah,
want to get paid for a headache. Would I rather
that's
have
true.
would I rather have one door in a single family, or would I rather have a fourplex that has four doors and I'm getting paid four rents for the same amount of work? So,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
if you're asking me my buy box, I'm looking for anything four doors and up.
So let me ask you this. I don't know if you all saw, but there's so I got you on that. So one thing I do want to ask is about land and building. And the only reason I ask that is because there's some buildings out here that built in Third Ward.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how big the house really was, but on the article, it was a small looking house, but they put 10 doors in it. And they basically rented it on pad split. Now, I don't know
Mm,
if you like the Passport Airbnb community. I do Airbnb. So I've seen some, I've seen some good times with it. But I know they built 10 doors and it built it as a Passport house, right?
okay.
Where they're renting each since there's a new build, they're renting
They're
each
renting
room out for around
each room
yeah,
inside the building. Okay.
each room
I've
inside
seen
the
that.
building for around 800 to
I've seen that
probably
before.
a
Yep, I've
thousand
seen
to
that.
1100. Yes, sir. So I guess, that was the biggest thing is like, if that was something like, because I'm actually working on getting a lot under contract in third ward. It's a smaller lot, but I just wonder if something like this could work or like how they are already doing it in third ward, because that was an article that just came out in Houston Cron not too long ago. If you do look it up on your own time, I just want y'all to take a look at where they did like they rent out two doors, new bill for Passport in Houston. So
Yeah.
third ward.
You're starting to see a lot of that pop up. I think the owners who do it, uh, they're smart, but they also do put themselves at risk because when you
Mhm.
are doing room rentals like that, yes, you're gonna exponentially increase your income because you're renting out every room inside the house instead of just renting out the unit itself. But you, like I said, you open yourself to liability because, say, for example, um, you got five rooms, and two of the rooms that are being rented out, the people haven't been screened. So now you got people because a lot of the times, if you're going to be in a living situation where you're renting out rooms, a lot of people who are doing that are going to be lower income, um, and also could have a background to where they couldn't qualify for a regular rental or they couldn't qualify for a house. So they may have a specific background that doesn't allow them to get into that. So now if you're accepting people who can't qualify, um, and you're putting them in close proximity to each other, it could stir up some issues.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, which does make sense. I do know that's why Passport does give. They do have like a background check that they do, and they kind of have their own thing. The only thing is, you're splitting some of that money with Passport, obviously. Now, if you did direct booking, that would be obvious. I can see that how that could be a little harder, but I
Hmm.
do know Passport does a background check. They make sure that the people living there are earning have a job that they're earning money coming
Yeah,
in, and also they do like checks because they're supposed to be paying weekly. These people are supposed to be paying weekly instead, and they are weekly or bi-weekly or whatever works for that with them to get to their monthly, whatever it is. So,
yeah.
but you are right with that, with them being lower individuals or just singles that want to kind of
Yeah, I mean,
thug it out.
as long as everyone's being screened and
Yeah.
the background's properly checked, I don't have an issue with it.
Mhm.
I just know a lot of property owners who have done that, and they're letting people who are basically undocumented come and stay in a room just
Mm-hmm.
because they have the money to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing you know, they're here one week and they're gone the next. You don't know what's going on. It creates more problems for me than I think that sometimes is worth. But that is a way I think
I
to you
see.
can definitely accelerate your cash growth, your cash flow. If, say for example, if you have a 3 bedroom, in my mind, a 3 bedroom, I automatically equate that to $1,500 a rental. But if you're renting out each bedroom for 800 and now you made 2,400 instead of 1,500, then you just boosted up, an extra 900. So I see why people do it, but definitely lucrative, but you can expose yourself to more risk.
Yep.
But no, that helps. No, I see what you're saying as well as more, kind of more work on that person too, or more anxiety, whatever you want to say. Yeah, I got you. I got you. That makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right.
Alrighty, guys. Well, if you don't, if you have his contact information, Victor, if not,
Yeah, did you
reach
get
out
mine
to
off the
me.
slide?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I screenshotted it.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool, guys. I'm gonna stop the recording. Let's see here. Recording stop.